Hi, I'm Adam, and this is the Uplink Port. On today's episode, I really have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, do I ever? But that's aside from the point. Over the past 3 weeks, I have been collecting both old and new routers off of eBay. However, the two routers that I actually wanted to mess around with today haven't turned up, and that's despite the seller saying they have been shipped, but Royal Mail's own tracking saying they're still awaiting to be collected. So I've either been lied to or Royal Mail have genuinely lost the items. Either way, it's incredibly annoying because those two routers, I got a deal, which kind of supports the seller lying to me, but I don't know. But also, they are relatively quite rare with the options that I got with them. So I'm quite annoyed, to be honest with you. That being said, I have managed to find one of them through another seller who has shipped them. However, they're not going to be here in time for the rest of this video. So for now, we're going to have to work out something else to do, and we've got other bits to be doing. We need to be sorting out the rest of the infrastructure, which probably isn't a bad thing anyway, because it then means we can play around with all of this to our heart's content once that's done. We've also got some cool things to be going over. This in particular, this has a story to it. It's quite old. It is as dirty as it potentially comes across on camera, and something I don't really want to be sitting near for much longer because I have no idea where it's been. But yeah, anyway, on that note, whether you're into retro networking gear or just curious on how things work, stick around. Right, before I forget, the giveaway. The giveaway is all finally sorted. Details on that will be in the video description and also in the end of this video in my ramblings. So if you want a chance to win a t-shirt worldwide, stick around to the end of the video to find out how to enter. So today's video, what I actually had planned was something completely different. I actually wanted a break from sitting in front of a machine and you lot just watching me doing screen capture. So I had actually planned to be messing around with a load of routers that I've collected off of eBay over the past 2 weeks. However, as I said in the intro for all of this, the two that I actually really wanted to play around with today haven't turned up. Now, as I said, one is on reorder and it will be here at some point, but it's not going to be in time for me to actually get in and finish doing this video in. As I said, I'm already 2 weeks into this and I'm only just starting to record this. So this will hopefully be out in the next week from this point. But as I said, there are still things that we need to do. There's still the infrastructure side that we still need to build out. So we still need to sort out the DNS. We still need to support SMTP, although probably not going to use it. I need to get a base built for Debian to be able to just literally deploy as a virtual image whenever we need for something that we haven't come across yet. So that'd be nice to have done. We also need to get TR69 set up, and that's also where all of this was going to lead into today, because the collection of routers that I have here from eBay are both old and new. The new being a Tplink Aginet. What model was this one? This is a VX230V. Now, I know this supports auto provisioning because we use it in the office. Now, a lot of auto provisioning, especially TR69, isn't a broadcast protocol. It requires the actual routers to actually be physically told where to go to get their config. Now, with a load of manufacturers, they used to be able to do that when you were buying in bulk. You could do that through a logistics provider who would then flash the firmware on the routers so that when you got them plugged them in, it would call home and get their config. The Tplink Aginet series does exactly the same. I actually have the software to be able to configure that because we use these routers where I work. But they also have the ACS software, which I don't have because that is the level above. That I believe does all of that remotely without you having to program any of it. It's kind of like their own version of an auto discovery type of deployment platform that I don't have access to, but what we want to do with this will work. So that's one good thing. As for all of this, I literally have no idea. Ignore the fact that there are two ZyXEL routers. I've been bidding on so many things, I kind of forgot what I was bidding on and what I was buying now for. So because of that, I've ended up with two ZyXEL P660H series routers, one of which is a Wi-Fi version and the other one is a non-Wi-Fi version, but they will still be used and they weren't exactly the earth to buy anyway. The other one I have at the top is a D-Link DSL 924. Now that router I had when I was younger. That was after the Smoothwall series or saga in my life. So I'm really interested to get that in. That is actually pretty much in a pristine box. All the bits should be in there for it. I haven't opened any of these. I've literally just taken them out of packaging, but that does have its dongle with it as well, I believe. So that'll be interesting to look at. And also one thing I'm really interested in actually messing around with, which if you watch Collab, you will know his tower of Linksys devices that he's got. I actually have a new in-box Linksys AG241 ADSL router. So we will do an unboxing on that because I said this is sealed, it's unused. So I'm really excited to get that out of the box and mess around with. And speaking of boxes, this big thing here, there is a story to this. This I personally deployed 20 years ago in a previous company to a customer that we still do little bits for. I haven't spoken to in a very long time, and they happened to reach out about a year or so ago, and it was the same guys I dealt with back in the day, and said, Adam, we've still got some of your really old stuff in storage. They're a storage company. So it kind of made sense that they've still got it. They don't throw anything out. And they basically said, do you want it? And at the time, beginning of the year, I said, no, I've got no use for it. But it's weird how events unfold to the point where I reached back out to them about a week or so ago and said, out of interest, do you still have it? And they said, yes. So over the weekend, I went and picked this up. And this is special because this is a client-side bonding router from 20 years ago. It's got a physical motherboard in it. It is a physical PC with Sangoma cards in the back of it. I'm really excited to play around and hopefully get this working. However, given the state that it is in, both at the front and the back, I don't think that's going to be relatively easy. There is some caveats to this. The software that this runs on isn't actually on the drive or the hard drive, it's actually on a CD. So I'm hoping the CD is still in there. And also there's a memory stick that goes with it that holds all the config and the license key information. And the license key information was required if you were using the software without buying your broadband in through the provider that actually developed the software that's running on this. So yeah, also I have opened this because when this was in the back, as with all of these, the ports on the back of them aren't protected, and I did this back in the day as well, where you put the server down and the memory key be in the back, and literally this would turn into an L-shaped USB key. So I have actually had to bend it all back. I haven't tested it. It hasn't been used again in about 20 years, maybe a little bit less. I can't remember exactly when it was, but I'll pick that up in a minute because it's in pieces on the floor. The case has come off. If it still works, I'm curious to know what data's on it, because obviously I've never experienced it, but there is such a thing with bit rot with those types of digital storage media, especially something at that age. So it'll be interesting to see if we can get the data off of it, but that is a future video. This was going to be today's video, but if I have time at the end of it, we'll mess around with some of these, because I said it'll be interesting to see if these have actually got the login details for where they originally came from. But for now, we will jump back onto screen capture. We will set up a base version of Debian. We'll go through setting up a client-side DNS server. We will do a root server at some point once we get all of our IPs set up from RIPE and our ASM, which is still to come in a future video. I'm still getting sponsors set up for that to be able to do that. So once that gets done, we'll do that in that. But having a Debian image ready to deploy, ready for that, would be ideal. We also need to get SMTP running. The TR69 server that we need in the future as well is a Windows-based one, so we'll do that. And yeah, afterwards, we'll have a play with all of this and see how we get on. And yeah, see where this episode takes us, because at the minute, I don't really have a clear direction of where I'm going to go with it. So yeah. Anyway, right, enough of me rambling. Let's get on with the video. You join me back setting up a base version of Debian. Now, it has been mere seconds for you, however it has been many days for me since I last did the last recording on this. I had planned to jump straight into this, however I ended up back at the dentist for the second time this month, and it's probably not going to be the last either. So kind of annoying, but it did give me some time to think. It's also given Irvi some time to actually progress the delivery for the additional router, which apparently is out for delivery today. However, it said that at 2:30 this morning, and it is currently 20 to 4 in the afternoon, and it hasn't turned up. So I am not getting my hopes up that it does turn up. However, if it does or doesn't, is irrelevant. I am still going to be doing stuff with what I showed you earlier anyway, because I think it'll be fun to power some of those up, and I would like very much a break from doing all of this side of stuff and just messing around. So we're definitely going to be doing that once we've finished all of this. Now, I have configured a default Debian install on ESXi. I have installed and enabled NF tables. We've got a very basic firewall setup on it. I have set up the firewall rules for IPv6. None of the network is IPv6 enabled yet. I actually want to be doing that with routable address space, which again, we're still waiting on me setting up all the ASN and IPv4 and IPv6 address allocations. I'm still trying to work out what I can and can't show you on that from a right perspective. So you just bear with me a little bit on that one, but that will be a video in itself. But all of this is being pre-set up, ready for IPv6, and we can change a lot of that as we move through deploying all of this and revisit some of it as we need to in order to get that set up. But fundamentally, NF tables is installed with a very basic IPv4 and IPv6 rule. Everything's scheduled to load on startup. I have now configured this as an image, so I'm now going to shut this down. It's then going to enable me to take a backup of it so that when we need to deploy stuff moving forward, I can literally just grab that image, deploy it, and then set it up and reconfigure it for whatever we need. So all of that is now ready to back up, and I am literally just going to export this using the built-in wizard for ESXi. Now obviously once this is exported, we can then re-import that image and configure it for whatever service that we need. Now in the lab environment, I could literally just configure this as one individual's instance and then configure all the services off of that single server. However, I am a great advocate for running individual images for the individual services you're running across your network. Plus my OCD won't let me do anything different. And the only exception to this is we're not going to be running anything in a redundant or backup configuration. It is literally going to be single images serving what we need. And let's be honest, it doesn't matter in this environment. If anything goes wrong with any of these, I'm going to have them backed up so we can restore them anyway in case we make a mistake during the configuration process, which of course is a great benefit of any type of virtualization. Now we've got a couple of images that we need to install. We need to install a client-side DNS server, which is going to act as a recursive lookup. So it's literally going to go out to the root servers and get the records and then serve them onto the customers. An SMTP server, whether or not we use that or not, I don't know, but it might be an interesting thing to run a Windows XP machine with Outlook Express to see if it talks to a modern SMTP server or whether we need to run something older within the network. We've obviously got our auto provisioning or TR069 platforms. We need to set that up, but the one I've got for the Tplink is a Windows-based application, so we're going to have to set up a Windows image for that as well, so we'll do that later. And the other thing that we need to look at setting up is a reverse DNS server. Now I could run this on the client side one, but I'd rather do it separately. Obviously, from a forwarding perspective, what you normally have in the modern day is literally a server that is going out and translating a domain name to an IP address. In the ISP space, obviously, we do the other side of it as well. So we're actually then translating an IP address to the actual domain name, hence the reverse DNS side of stuff. Now, all of that configuration is typically controlled via your regional register as to who's allocated you the IP space. In my case, it will be RIPE. Now, I'm still going through the sponsorship process of getting the IP space in ASN, so I don't actually know what I can and cannot show you in that respect. Hopefully, I can show you the portal and setting all that up and actually then sort of driving the requests back into this setup so you can actually see how they're delivered and then answered on the back end of that. But obviously that is a separate video in itself once all of that comes together, but I'm really excited and we're almost really there with that. Speaking of nearly there, that has all downloaded a little while ago, so I'm going to go and get one of those installed and then start configuring it for bind, and then that's probably going to take a little while to deploy. So while that's deploying, I'm going to run through what we're doing and why we're doing it. Right, so this is now ready to deploy for the third time for me because I've been interrupted with people coming to the door, which would be fine if they had the router that I wanted, but none of them have been. They've been Amazon deliveries. So disappointment all round. This is going to take a little bit to deploy, and I thought while we're doing that, we're going to quickly run over what we're going to be doing. So once this is actually deployed and running, it's going to be reconfigured. We're going to be running bind on it, which is pretty much the industry standard DNS server these days. Now, I could go in and configure bind via the config files via PuTTY. However, I'm going to install Webmin. Don't shout, don't scream. I know a lot of you are. It is what it is. I actually prefer using Webmin. It makes configuring stuff an awful lot easier, and for people that are following me that have no clue what they're doing, configuring the files with sometimes the correct syntax and actually even getting them to load without errors can be troublesome. Having that in the GUI with just the ability to configure everything in text boxes or tick boxes as you need to, in my view, makes life a damn sight easier. Plus, Webmin enables you to actually control the system itself easier, in my view. There's also the ability to install all the packages with it as well for other services that you might want to run, despite me saying don't run them on the same system, but they're there if you want to be able to do it. And it actually makes configuring bind and the backup and clustering services, again, in my view, an awful lot simpler as well. And you can also run Webmin in cluster-based servers as well, and you can configure them all to talk to each other and replicate themselves. So my personal opinion is I do prefer using Webmin, and that's exactly what I'm going to deploy on this. Obviously, you don't have to. If you know what you're doing on all of this, you can literally just go and configure everything in the config files and be done with it. But for me personally, I'm going to use Webmin. Once this is installed, which is probably going to be another couple of minutes, I will jump back, and then we'll get bind installed. We'll then get Webmin installed, and then we'll then get bind configured via Webmin. So I will come back to you in a minute. Right, that is now up. Obviously, the first thing that we need to do is actually change its IP address so we don't end up with a conflict with the default image when I forget to change it, which will no doubt happen if I don't at a later date. Let's do that. What I have pre-done is assigned it 220. I need to tidy all this up because it's a bit of a mess, but we're going to go and put that as, did I do that? Yes, I did, 221. Okay, cool. I'm now going to do sudo system control restart. Not working. It's late in the day and I'm getting tired. Right, we need to reconnect to the new IP address and then we'll get bind installed. So 121.20.221. Close that before it errors. User password 123, nice and secure. Elevate to root, password 123, nice and secure. And to install bind, it is literally just a case of doing apt get install bind 9. That should then go off and get the packages and then install that ready for us to use. And then obviously once this is installed, then we'll then go and grab Webmin, because Webmin actually has like a nice installer package now all in one, which is already on the website in here. Obviously you can go off and install it manually if you want. Where am I going here? We need to we also need to go and get curl because that's not installed looking at that command, so let's go and do that. Just done, and let's go and grab Webmin. I'm just going to go and well, I could just copy that from there, couldn't I? And let's go and paste that in, and off it goes. Obviously, that will go install everything we need and any dependencies or anything like that are missing. So hopefully, once that's installed, then we should be able to get to the Webmin login and then actually then configure bind via the GUI interface. I have no idea how long this is going to take, so I may pause. Progress has been made, and apparently that's installed. Webmin and usermin can be installed with apt-get install recommended with Webmin. Okay, well, let's just run that because I'm assuming that's just going to got the packages for everything then. So 268 meg. I'm going to take a while to download, but it might take a few minutes to get installed. So, right, I will come back in a moment. Right, that is all now installed. Now, it should literally just be a case of going to the Webmin interface on this and being able to log into it, which is on https 192.168.20.221:1000. I would have expected that to have loaded by now. Why have you not loaded? What's not loaded for that matter? Firewall, of course. That would be why. Let's jump back and add the ports in for this. Now you'll have to excuse me glancing over at the other screen. I've realized while all of that was installing, we've got no actual ability to test queries from a third-party machine unless I configure mine to do that. and there's probably a lot of DNS requests going from this machine I don't want seen. So I'm installing a Windows XP machine, which is going to sit on the same network, which will enable us to do queries easily from a third-party system on the same network, so we can make sure that recursive is working from only accepted hosts. What was I doing? Oh, I was doing this, wasn't I? So let's create another heading. What we want, Webmin. And then we're going to do IP SA DDR 192.168. I hate not being on. 192.168.20.0/24 TCP D port, and then we want bracket. No, we don't want that because it's going to be port 10,000 accept. You'd think I know how to spell by now, especially given the fact it's literally just in top of it, on top as well. What else do we want? We're going to need to enable port 53 as well, so let's do that now. For now, I am literally just going to allow everything on the ports, just to make it easier for testing later. So we want UDP port, you can tell it's late in the day, can't you? 53. And then we're also going to enable TCP. DNS is typically UDP, but there are some scenarios where DNS can be TCP, so we'll make sure we've got the ability to accept both of those as well on the firewall. And what else do we need? We actually need HTTP, don't we, to be able to get into this. So let's just call this HTTP. I will probably go through later and rename all of these. Whoa, Windows XP. That is all installing. Right, okay, cool. And I'm going to be lazy. Source address, D port, and then this should have HTTP, and then comma HTTPS. If these load afterwards without me spotting I haven't made a mistake, it'll be a miracle. Right, Webmin, DNS, HTTP, HTTPS. Let's reload the rules. Oh, there's a surprise. What have I missed? What have I done, should I say? TCP default accept, looks fine. DNS, UDP, IP, source address, TCP. Oh, I've missed a D off of destination port. Right. What now have I done? It's late. I'm getting tired, so I'm missing things. I'm missing letters. I missed the S off of the end of NF tables. Not NF table, is it? Right, that has loaded all the rules. So hopefully we should now be able to get into Webmin, which we can. Now this will be using the root details for the system. So root, password 123. Now, this is what I like about Webmin. Now, I realise this is a very modern, current version of Webmin and everything we're doing, and obviously I've been trying to go on the basis of using older versions of everything. We can certainly do that with DNS because there's going to be no issues with that. However, I will have to get a period correct version of Debian installed, get all the dependencies and repositories sorted, and then get this installed. So as I said with all of this, we'll get it working and then we'll start moving back on some of the versions just because we need a working base to work from. Webmin, I just prefer it for some systems. I do a lot of stuff with CLI as well. I am also a very visual person. I like to see what's going on. This is also a very nice way to jump into a system to see what's going on with it. The nice thing about this as well is you can see every module or service that you've got installed that is external, like Bind as an example. You've got a load of tools to be able to go in and configure stuff. And for system administration, for someone who just wants something like this, this is perfect. And it's one of the reasons I'm looking at it. It is completely overkill for literally configuring Bind to allow recursive, because that's all we're going to be doing on this at the minute. But it just gives an overview of exactly what it is. So let's jump into Bind. Now, you've got all your existing zones down the bottom. This is where you'd configure your reverse lookup side of stuff as well as also your forwarding. So here, this could be a very crude way of basically DNS poisoning or hijack. So you can actually put in like so we could put in google.com in here and then pointing that off to a different IP address. So anyone querying google.com through here would actually get the results that we put in here rather than actually from the root servers up further upstream. So in here you can configure absolutely everything. You've got your DNSSEC, but you can configure SSL configuration. You've got cluster servicing. Now clustering with Webmin is really nice. If we had another one of these running, we probably will do at some point in the future. You install Webmin on it exactly as you've got now. You set up Webmin and then you set up your Webmin configure server index. You set up another server and then that appears over in here, and then literally any zone files you add in here will also go and get distributed to the other one as a secondary server. So you've effectively got your redundancy built into it from having multiple servers and one single point to be able to control everything. So from that point of view, it's extremely nice. You've got your forwarding and transfers. This is if you just want to forward stuff off to other name servers like Cloudflare or Google DNS or anything like that. We are literally going to be configuring, not that. We are literally going to be configuring, I've forgotten where it was. It's been a while since I've been in here. Access, and there we go. Right, we're going to allow recursive lookups. So at the minute it's set to default, which I imagine is probably the local address for the system. We're going to change it to listed. We're going to say 127.0.0.1 because we obviously want the local host to be able to use itself to go and get records. And we're going to put in the entire /24 on the IPv4 subnet we're using. Obviously you put in your IPv6 addresses in here as well if you wanted to. But for now, that is all we're going to put in. We're going to be listening on any address. It should be listening on anything anyway, because this is a default install, so we shouldn't need to change anything. We'll come back to it if we do. It's been a while since I've been in this. Well, I haven't been in this version of Webmin at all, and there's a few options in here that I'm not entirely familiar with. To be honest, it's been a while since I set up Bind. I think the last time I set up Bind was 8 years ago, something like that. But all of this is relatively the same. That is all done, and I'm guessing we're going to have to apply the configuration. And is there a... Should we just stop Bind and restart it? Right, that has been done. The other thing I did while I was waiting for all of this is I changed the name server on this to point to itself. So let's make sure local resolution is working. And then let's go and just query the BBC. Okay, that's getting records back. That should be in the log files, but as to whether or not I can remember where they are on here is another matter. System logs. Okay, well, it's pulling everything out from here anyway. So does it have... Can I search for what we've just seen? Nope. I said it's been a while since I've been in here. To be fair, DNS login might not actually even be turned on. Word, there is more in here than I can remember. I'll work out where that is later. But it is obviously doing lookups, which is nice. Well, if for the local host, which it would be doing anyway. So where is that Windows XP install? Let me jump back to over here, which is logging out. VMware and its quirks. Log in after it's refreshed, and you have to force a refresh of the page. Oh, okay. ISPs. I expected my first reinstall of Windows XP to actually be on proper hardware rather than on a VM session, which I'm kind of disappointed that it's not actually on physical hardware, but needs must. I will go through and again, it's not major. Right, let me jump through and get this installed and through all the welcome to Windows XP stuff, and then we'll jump back when I've got into the desktop. Right, Windows XP is installed. Many hours has passed because that was not as simple as I thought it was going to be. Trying to get the network adapter installed on this has just been mind-blowing, and eventually discovered it's because of me. So I installed VM tools thinking that everything would then just come up, and most things did. However, the network card did not. And after scouring the internet up and down all over the place, I finally came across a post from Alex Brown, which dated back from 2010, which basically said that if you've installed the 32-bit version on a 64-bit image, basically telling VMware that you're installing a 64-bit image, there's certain parameters that it installs for you, one of which is the network adapter or card type for the driver it's going to be using. So I had to go into the VMX file, remove that particular line, and exactly, voila, it then started working. Also, while all that was going on, I decided to enable query logging in Bind so we can actually see the log outputs for everything. Now, that in itself took longer than it should have done. The logging entry was added for it, the file was created, the permissions are set up, but Bind would refuse to load, stating an access issue in accessing that file. I had to go into AppArmor, which is basically a service or application that runs in the background that controls what other services have access to what files effectively. So within here, I had to add in an additional few lines as to what had permission to get into what for Bind to be allowed to access that file and then write to it. So this whole thing has taken much longer than it should have done, and as no surprise to anyone, this has not gone as simple as it should have done, but we are now there. Now, I have literally done local testing from this, which is why I've got two windows up. So querying, we can actually now see query results actually coming back and the fact that they've been accepted and not refused, which is nice. Obviously, they're coming back there. What we need to do is now actually just enable Windows XP to use that DNS server so we can actually just test it from a recursive point of view, because these are going to come in from a different IP address that should have access, and hopefully that'll go right and then just return the results. So we're going to set the DNS on that to 221, I think it was. We are going to load up, I can't remember if it's command or CMD, let's put PCMD. Cannot find non-existent domain, that's fine. It can't find the reverse name for it, I think. That is pulling back the results. That's perfect. And we can see that query that's come in there, which has been allowed. And just so we can go and grab another record, in fact, let me move this up here, move that down there. You can still see everything. Let's go and query. As soon as I click in that, the window's going to disappear, isn't it? Yes, oh well, we'll go back to it. So in query digitally imported, it's come back with the answers, which is nice. And it's come back with the queries in there as well. Perfect. Now, just to prove a point that recursive is working, if I go back into Webmin, this may have logged me out because of the time. No, it hasn't. If I go into here, if I change recursive to say 30, say about what is allowed to access it, apply configuration. Now, you don't necessarily have to stop Bind and restart it. I'm going to. and it's nice that that hasn't errored. I saw it was quite a bit trying to get the login working. What was I doing? If I go back to here now, if I try and query that same server, I should now see that refuse. Yeah, query refused. Okay, so this is only accepting queries from the IP space that we've allowed, and it may even show up here that it was refused. I can't remember what I have enabled. Logging wise, it's just Google. Well, it's come and it's got it, but it hasn't shown it's refused. I probably haven't got the login set up to actually show refused queries, but that will basically be obviously it's a refused query because it's not going through. So, right, DNS is working as we want it to, and that's all we're going to mess around with on this for this. I'm just going to put this back to 20 before I forget. Let's just apply that. Let's actually just see if, okay, cool. So we don't need to restart it moving forward. Fine. Right. DNS queries are working on that resolver, which basically now means that we can specify this DNS server in radius for the DSL clients that connect. So next step will be to mess around with some bits in terms of routers, I think. I'm not going to bother installing any other images at the minute because there's no point. This is already running on as it is in terms of time, and we're not going to use the SMTP server this episode, so there's no point, although we do have a nice XP system built now for it. We're not doing the root. Auto provisioning we do want to mess around with, so I'll probably set that image up. I won't screen capture it because there's no point. You don't need to see me doing it. I'll get it built, installed, and then we'll get the auto provisioning running on it. Right, yeah, I think we're going to do that. Right, I'm going to get everything, well, probably not today, but I'm going to get everything cleared off of the table. I'm going to get one of the new routers from eBay unboxed, connected and configured. I'm also going to get this Windows XP host connected to it as well via the spare Ethernet interface on ESXi, which probably makes sense because some of those routers up there are relatively quite old. And I don't know how a modern browser is going to connect to those, if at all, without any sort of certificate errors or security warnings or anything like that. So it probably makes sense to use this Windows XP to do all of that. Plus, it means we can do a load of testing on the Windows XP machine as well, going forward with things. So I think that was probably the best thing to have actually done, is to actually get this installed and working. Plus, obviously, now I can copy them, we can do multiples of them, and we can mess around with other images as well moving forward with all of it. So that has been helpful. Also, once we get into those routers, we can actually start looking at the TR069 and auto provisioning process and what we need to get them configured and online. I will build an auto provisioning image as well on the back end of it in this video. It will probably be a Windows image, unfortunately, because the Tplink software for the modern router that I've got is only Windows based, or at least I'm aware of, that I've got access to. So it kind of seems a bit silly to install a Linux version solely for the older routers and then a Windows version literally for the Tplink router. So we will probably just run those all from a Windows machine, and I will just get a TR069 server installed on the Windows machine to send out config files to the other devices, which also brings me on to another point. We're going to actually have to work out what these routers require from a config point of view, what config files they need, what format, how the layout in those files needs to be. Can we find any examples of what they need online and so forth? So there's a lot for us to still to build out in the rest of this video, and hopefully by the end of it we'll have had, obviously we've got DNS working, but we'll have routers connecting using our DNS and hopefully being auto provisioned as well via our auto provisioning server. So right, I am going to call it quits for the minute. I need to take a break. All of this has taken hours today on the weekend to try and get to where I am. I need to take a step away from it, so I will probably pick this up tomorrow. So for you guys, a few seconds. For me, either later today or tomorrow, but I will see you very shortly. Right, I have nominated the two routers that we are going to use. Now, I apologise in advance if you can hear any gurgling. It's actually the air conditioning unit that's on, because in the UK at the minute it's about 32 degrees. And in here, because it's so well insulated, without it on, it goes above 40 degrees Celsius. So yeah, and in the UK, we like to moan about anything that's over the temperature of about 21 degrees Celsius. So At the minute over here we are struggling and moaning. Well, I'm not because the AC's on, but yeah, generally we moan anyway. So, right, ignore the cabling as well in the background. I need to stick a DP on the wall, or a couple of DPs on the wall, and actually map that through to some sockets or an RJ11 panel to be able to quickly disconnect and connect these moving forward. Obviously we're growing all of this as we go, and I do plan to connect them, and there's some bits in the pipeline, but I don't really want a wall of sockets, although it might be nice. A work in progress. I haven't quite decided what I'm going to do yet, but for the minute there's a couple of sockets on the wall, so that needs tidying up. Now, in the intro, I said that these were identical in that one, well, other than the fact that one was wireless and one isn't. I believe that's the case because this doesn't mention anything about Wi-Fi unless the antenna is built into it. The also difference is this is a Prestige model, whereas this is a P model. I don't know if the P is shortened for Prestige or this is just Prestige because it's the Wi-Fi version and it's a later model. I'm not entirely sure, but they are from the same 6600 series, so I guess we'll find out as we go along. Now, for this, I don't need the Wi-Fi side of stuff, so we're going to take this one out the way, and this one weighs a ton, so I can only imagine it's a transformer inside rather than a DC switch mode power supply. I haven't had any of these out. Now, these all came from eBay, and it's interesting getting stuff from eBay because you then realise, or you get to experience how different people ship different things. This one literally came with the shipping label on front of it because you've still got the tape that's actually attached to the box, whereas some of them have turned up in black bin bags, some of them have turned up in shopping bags from the local supermarkets. It has really been a mixed bag of what's actually turned up and this, that and the other. So, right, let's get this one out. I'm rambling because the MSAN is booting and it's actually nice and quiet with those new fans in it. And interestingly, with those new fans in it, it stopped the ramping up and ramping down when it boots. So I don't know whether the new fan's got a lower current draw that's not causing any additional load on those capacitors, which is causing it to fluctuate when it first comes online, or whether it was just those fans that are causing the issue. I'm not entirely sure, but it is booting. However, I did manage to cause myself another issue in that with that server in here, that's also been incredibly noisy. So I've actually had to do a mod on the server to get that down to some sort of reasonable noise level. So I will talk about that later. Right, what have we got in here? A very lightweight DC power supply, which is an OEM, 12 volts, 1 amp, so we'll throw that there. We have our router, which all said and done isn't in bad condition, but I wouldn't expect it to be anything else because it's pretty much been sat, I'd imagine, on someone's side. It'd be interesting to see if this is programmed. We have a DSL port, 4 Ethernet ports, one of which is labelled DMZ, a console and aux port, and a switch to switch between aux and console, power, and a physical mechanical switch, which is nice. Usual cables, what looks like a brand new RJ45 cable that's never been used, a filter that is extremely yellow. It doesn't smell of smoke, so I imagine it's just discoloured over time, and then the usual array of cable instructions and CDs and whatnot. Stuff I don't need at the minute, so let's throw that out the way. Right, the MSAN has booted, so I can stop rambling for time. Now, let's get all this plugged in. Now, port 1 is, or should be, still configured for DSL, assuming it's not lost its settings again. And again, I was contacted by people to say that it's not uncommon for them to lose their settings via the GUI, so look at using the console moving forward. So I do need to get a console cable sorted out for that, or at least made up. Let's plug in the DSL, and we'll plug this into port 2, not the port 1 DMZ port. Right, now I should explain, this cable, or this network cable, is going into the back of the ESXi host, which the Windows XP machine is also on. The Windows XP machine has its network adapter mapped in ESXi to use that port, which is what's on this cable, so we can configure this from the Windows XP machine, which is nice, and also mess around with it and actually have something that I can screen capture relatively quite simply. Now, I've picked this purely because I believe these have the best chance of running TR069, and DSL is syncing. So we'll go through and see what we can set up from an auto provisioning point of view on this. Now, I'm hoping this is all still configured. Well, that's a positive sign. Be interesting to see if we can log into this as well and see if it's actually still set up for the previous login for the previous provider. Right, perfect. Okay, well, that's in sync. DSLAM is all up. Let's jump back to screen capture, see if we can log into this or whether we've got to factory reset it, and then make sure this is pulling all the DNS. Actually thinking about it, we need to update the radius for the accounts to pull the new DNS, and then we'll make sure Windows XP is getting online with all of this, and then we'll move forward with the auto provisioning stuff. So right, I shall see you in a moment. Right, I think I have everything in a place where you can actually see it, and I believe the Windows 10 install that is currently running in the background that I've had to wait for because it's been consuming all the ESXi host resources because I maxed them out when I did the image, I think it's finally finished. So this is actually running faster than it was 10 minutes ago. Looking at this, we have got assigned an IP address, which is great, so it's seeing the router on the end of it. Let's quickly jump into Internet Explorer and actually see if we can access the router. Now, I haven't tried this yet, so I don't know what we're going to be presented with and if it's back at factory default or whether it's going to ask for login details. In fact, I haven't even looked at the radius to see if we're seeing anything come through, because arguably, if it is configured for the previous ISP, we should see the records come through on the low radius. Well, there's no password or anything, so I'm assuming this is default, which would make sense. I would have expected people potentially to have factory reset these before they went out. But it's DSL connected, which is a really weird upstream rate, but I have no idea where I'm going. Literally none. Where is there a way to get into advanced? Are there menus missing in Internet Explorer? Status. Is this going to take me back to this page? Message ready. Where do I go? I have no idea what I'm doing. I mean, do I ever? But well, I can't click on anything. The only option I've got available to me is status, and unless I'm being an idiot or I've logged in as a user or something, this is all I see. Let's log back out and just make sure. I'm assuming there's only one user for this. I don't know what the password's going to be. I assume 1234. Okay. So where we just logged in under a normal user. Let's use our password 123 exclamation mark. Password 123 exclamation mark. Password 123 exclamation mark. Replace factory default certificate. The factory default certificate is common to all prestige models. Click apply to create certificate union. I really don't care. Do whatever. Just log me into the interface. I get the impression this has been factory reset. No, just go to advanced setup. Always give me advanced setup. Right, fantastic. We're in. I'm assuming the user it logged us in with when I just clicked log in was some sort of standard generic user that didn't have permission to do anything. So that's all the same. Obviously we've got settings now. Is there a way? Let's see what the WAN's configured as. Okay, yeah, there's nothing in here, so this has all been factory defaulted, which is fine. Right, let's jump on to our radius and amend our DNS to point to our local DNS server and get that router logged in and online. Nice. I can't remember what the details were. Radius. It's been a few weeks since I logged into here. Right, cool. Yeah, there's nothing in here anyway. So, right, I can't even remember what the users were. SMC, let's jump onto the user list. So, do we create another user? Well, might as well. New user. Username. ZyXEL 660H at the uplink.port.co.uk. I haven't yet set up the domain on this. Password 1234. Attributes. Now this should pull the default group that we set up the other day. I also need to remember where this is under. Microsoft. And we want DNS. Primary DNS would be nice. I've obviously scrolled past it. Primary DNS server. Add attribute. Still don't know what that's about. 192.168.20.221, I think it was. And we want to reply with that value. Right, let's copy that. Let's go over to here. We're going to use PPPoE for this. I'm going to call it the uplink. Nope, can't do that. The uplink port top. That's not sticking, by the way. Routing PPPoE. Oh, I can't copy through Windows, can I? Ha. ZyXEL 660H. It wasn't a capital, was it? No, not that I think that matters. At the uplink port.co.uk. 1234. Service name doesn't matter. I can't remember if I've got it set up as VCMux or LLC. I'm assuming VCMux. We'll find out. Obtain it automatically. Nailed up connection. Apply. Let's go back to here and let's see if we see it coming through. This isn't going to be, well, it should be simple, but I get a sneaking suspicion that something's not going to be working because it's been several weeks since I powered all this up. And that I can't see coming through. Everything. Did I change that or did it change itself? Have I got it set to PP? No, I haven't got it set to PPPoE. I can't even remember what the MSAM was on. 22. Admin 1234. Ports. PVC. Load profile 1. Load profile 1. So it's 038. It's on VCMux. It is there. It has saved it. What's PPPoE? VC 038. Have we got logs? Or are you going from top to bottom or bottom up? Call terminated. LCP. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so we are top to bottom connected. Let's clear the log. Well, it's opening up, but it's not. I believe our brass is on. Yes, everything is up and booted. Right, bear with me while I figure out what's going on, and I will come back to you, as always, with what I've done, or haven't done, as the case may be. Right, we are back, and we are seeing a load of access reject messages come back. Now, I did log into our brass and check the logs on it, and literally everything's coming through apart from this authentication failed. Now, looking at the logs that are coming through, I can only assume it is a username and password error, which is possible. The domain and everything is there. everything's coming in as it should, and then literally I went back and refreshed the lower radius and all the access reject messages are coming in there. Now when I booted this image up, I had the virtual Ethernet adapter disconnected because in one of the previous clips that never made it into it, I managed to configure the DNS server with the same IP address as this and had to disable this to be able to get into the DNS server to then reconfigure it back for the correct IP, and obviously I forgot to re-enable the virtual adapter back on this when it booted. So it's possible it's booted up with half of its services disabled and it's been waiting there until it's been able to recheck its adapter state to see that it's connected and brought the rest of the services up. I hadn't checked, I hadn't got around to doing that. But obviously that is there. Now, clearly I've been an idiot, so let's just double check. ZyXEL 660H. Where are we? Oh, we want this. ZyXEL 660H at the uplinkport.co.uk. In fact, I should just go to the user. ZyXEL 660H at the uplinkport.co.uk. All the vaccine is correct. The password is 1234. It is entirely possible that this just does not like 1234 as the password. Well, you think it's like where were we? Network WAN 1234. Apply. Now I have seen some instances where you've changed an option on here like we did, because obviously I put this back to VC because I'm not sure if I set it to VC. Obviously it was LLC when it reloaded, and then when you've applied it without re-entering the passwords, the gobbledygook that's in here in the background ended up being the main password. So are we still seeing messages fly through that are rejecting? Yes, we are. We're doing well on this, aren't we? Right, let's go and set the user password on this to something completely different. Can I change the password on this is the question. Actions. I guess I can change the password. I've never tried to change the password. How do you change the password? Edit user. User info. No. Oh, hang on. Why are we missing a load of attributes as well? I didn't enable the group, did I? No, I didn't. Right. Let's delete this user and just make sure all the profile and templating is working. New user. Default templates. Hello, video editing Adam here, and yes, I can spot my mistake now. I put a ZYZ instead of ZYX in the username, despite reading it back to myself several times and convincing myself was correct. I've only now just spotted it in editing, and that was only because the drop-down menu for that particular username changed as I started typing it, so it no longer matched. Having the default group as well missing also didn't help, but I just wanted to point all of this out before you lot shout me out in the comments. I know I'm an idiot, but what much else changes? Right, I will leave you to continue this rather long video. ZyXEL 660H at the uplinkport.co.uk. Password 1234. Attributes. No, I don't know why I keep doing that all the time. Microsoft. Primary DNS, add attributes, 192.168.20.221. Apply. Okay. Right. Are we now going to see something different? Did that connect? I'm assuming it did because we're not flying through red error messages anymore. Let's jump back on. here. Yay! Access accept. So if we jump back onto, then we should WAN information. I swear I'm losing my mind. I haven't done that now, have I? We've built the user, but I haven't actually put any of the account details in that this needs. Reply attributes. Add. Although, hang on. I thought we built a template to have all of this in. What have I missed? I know I selected it, and I know it's replying with the reply attributes because it's authenticated the user. Unless I put, no, because the password on here was 1234, which hasn't changed yet. We've got a framed IP address in there, which is fine for this one. But then this is missing the DNS information. Am I going mad, or have we not saved any information? We used these on the last episode, didn't we? Did we not assign DNS? I can't remember. I'm going mad. No, we must have assigned DNS. Or did I not on the new accounts? Maybe I didn't. I'm going mad. I'm literally going mad. In that case, let's just check the main user we've got here, because this should have it. Yeah, so this has got everything in. And we created the template to have the message authenticator. Yet the message authenticator is not in these users. Unless it's because it's assigned to the default group and it doesn't show those attributes in the list separately because they are in this group. User groups. I'm going mad with that as well. Where is that now? Batch users, user groups, management. It is in user groups. Config. No. I'm not doing well at the minute, am I? And I'm going to keep all this in because it just, yeah. Right, where is it? What? Management. We've got the NASes, which is ours. User group. Remove. Now I just want to list all the user groups that we set up, because we set up a, was it a profile? It's a profile. Right. Edit profile. Attributes, reply attributes. Right, so all the attributes are in there. We have, okay, so we can just set that in here. And what I might add as well is another attribute in here as the secondary server, just in case some routers expect to have two. So we'll add them both in as the same. Secondary server, add attribute, yes. 192.221, respond with that, apply with that. Right, cool, right, add in. Right, so that's all in, all the DNS information's in. The only thing that we then need to actually specify on all of that is the framed IP address that needs to be coming back. So let's take that out because we don't need it. Let's go back to here. Let's, the password attribute is fine. We need to add a separate attribute from the list. We need to add the RFC, and we need the framed IP address, which is going to be 192.168. 168. I can't remember that either. What do we have set on the others? (22). Oh, of course, we had a separate block for it, didn't we? It has been a few weeks since I looked at all of this. Right, that into that. Oh, is this because I opened up another window? You're now going to log me out, aren't you? No. Let me add an attribute. No, it's an RFC. Oh, maybe it's the heat. I'd blame the heat, but it's not the heat because it's warm. It's not warm in here. Right, framed IP address. Add attribute. U23 reply. Yes, please. Right, attribute. And then we want the net mask. Add attribute. 255, 255, 255, 255 because it's a /32. And we're going to reply, and if we look at the reply attributes, they should both be there, which is great. Everything in there is fine. Let's go back to here and let's have a look at the connected users, which is under, I can't remember this now either. Active connections, right. Let's drop you. You should then reconnect. Right, let's drop back onto here. Let's go back to here. Let's refresh this page, which you're going to ask me to log back in again. Yay! Right, so we have that. We don't have a default gateway, which is interesting, because that should be the brass. Let's just see if we can ping out. 8.8.8.8. Well, we're getting a reply. So I don't really know why that isn't showing the gateway, because it should be pulled through as part of the PPPoE request and messaging. So right, okay. So in theory, we should be able to get to something. I don't actually know what. I was about to look for another tab then, but of course you can't actually do that in Windows XP, can you? So let's. So play Google. This isn't funny anymore. This was supposed to be so simple. This was literally just supposed to work. Will you tell me what DNS servers you've pulled across on this at the very least? From a WAN perspective. Is there any way to see that, or is it literally just what's on the screen? That's a link through to that. Okay, well, let's jump on the logs, because potentially the logs should show me what DNS server it's come through. Nope. And that's all logs, which is helpful. As there's something not turned on in here. Nope, everything's turned on. See, I would have expected all the session information to have come through on here as well. Have we got anything in here as to what DNS has been sent I can't see anything. And that IP address is there, so I don't know why the ZyXEL hasn't seen it. Having said that, the issues we've seen with the ZyXEL GUI on the MSAN wouldn't surprise me if there's bugs in the GUI on the router as well. Best way to go about this. Let's have a look at the diagnostic pages again. Can we ping the BBC? This is going to tell us straight away where the issue is as to whether this is actually right. So we can't resolve anything. Let's just make sure I have got everything in here as it should be. The framed IP address is in here. That's in here. This is under the group, which the group is actually the profile. Let's just make sure I've got DNS servers associated, which I have. 20.221, 20.221. Let's just make sure the DNS servers are actually online. Let's close you. Virtual machines. Root. Password 123. IP ADDR. 192.168.20.221. Ping. Being a response. Let's jump onto Webmin. 20221 : this needs to be HTTPS root and password 123 exclamation mark. Let's just make sure bind is loaded and running, which it does appear to be. Let's make sure access is set up. There's our issue. I didn't change that back. I thought I did. Unless I didn't save it. Unless I changed it, reloaded it, and had an issue with all the permissions that I was having issues with. Let's just stop it and start it. You actually can't see because it's behind me, but that has loaded. Let's just jump back into here. Right, that's set up again. Let's jump back to here, virtual machines. No, that's the machine that's building for auto provisioning. Let's see if we can get to the BBC now. Hey, success. Right. Hopefully, now we can get to this. Perfect, fantastic. Oh, Google in Internet Explorer in Windows XP is a humbling thing of the past for me. I loved my youth. I loved growing up in this time frame. It was absolutely fascinating. I miss it so much. Let's see if fast.com, I might have been a bit optimistic with that in this browser. So this is resolving our DNS as we'd expect it to from the DSL client that is connected to the MSAN through that device. Fine. Everything from a DNS perspective is working, and it's taken far longer to get there than I initially thought. And I'm going to include most of this as well, so you can see exactly the mistakes I make during all of this. There is literally weeks that go past between me doing things, and obviously I'm doing other things at the same time, as well as recording all of this, and my brain just explodes with some of this sometimes, as just forgetting stuff. So, right, that's working. Auto provision is what we wanted to have a look at now, and I'm going to pause or stop this recording so I don't lose this section, so one moment. So, let's jump back into the router. Now, I have no idea if this is even possible on this or where it's going to sit. Arguably, I could set it up for the new Tplink. That is a conversation in itself, because I've had a bit of a realization with this one as well since initially saying we're going to use it and now. I tend to run over things in my head while I'm driving, and yeah, we may have an issue with that. So let's have a flick through the menus to see if there's a way to set up a TR069 host on this. I would have expected there to have been. Configuration, nope. I mean, let's just literally run through these going up. So we were in there, let's go into system, it's just time and date, nothing in there. Yeah, remote management, it's unlikely to be in here. Telnet, FTTP, FTP even. DNS, ICMP, I don't see it in there. No, DNS, it's not going to be in there. Bandwidth management, static route, it's not going to be in there. I doubt it. More connections? I'm assuming this is potentially going to be for the other interfaces, yeah. I don't see anything, so I don't even know if auto provisioning is even possible on all of these. We'll actually do a quick Google search now to see whether that supports TR069 and whether it is doable via the web interface, whether it's doable via PuTTY or anything like that. So let me go and do a quick bit of research and I'll come back with the outcome. Right, I have scoured this menu up and down for the past 5 minutes and I cannot see where this option is in the router GUI. So I can only assume that this is configurable via console or remote management using SSH or Telnet or something. This is for version 2.13, I think it was. Yeah, sorry, 3.12. We are running on here, if my mouse will work, version 3.40, I think it was, yeah, version 3.40. So we're running a later version on the router than we are in the manual. So it's not as if this hasn't been implemented. It should be there, but I cannot find it. And I would expect it to be under the remote management option because it is a remote management protocol. And certainly looking at this as well, this does refer to it as being within the management section of the interface, unless I'm misreading it, but I cannot find it. Now, I would expect a separate tab for it. It's not there, it's in none of the existing options, and I have flicked through all the menus again and I cannot see it. So I can only assume it's configured some other way. Now, I'm not giving up on this, but I am slightly limited time-wise. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab the Prestige model, put that on the desk and see if the interface for that is any different than whether you can see the TR069 option. If we can't, then I will have to revert to plan B, which is messing around with the more modern Tplink. But this in itself comes with its own pitfalls, which I will go over if we get to that point, and we'll go from there. So right, let me get the other one connected and we'll see what happens with that one. Right, so I have the Prestige model in front of me. Now I had to concentrate on that because I've tried to do this about 6 times and I keep saying module instead of model, which is really annoying. But fundamentally these are literally identical, other than the fact that the text on them is somewhat slightly different. They're pretty much the same. The only one of the differences is the fact that it says DSL PPP. So does it change colour depending on whether it's got a DSL sync and no PPP? I don't know, we'll find out. Again, I don't know if this is configured, so we should just be able to swap these connections over anyway. So let's pop you out. You. A network cable, RJ11 cable, and power cable. I see a problem already. That does not fit. Right, bear with me while I go and grab the other one out of the box. Oh, which weighs a ton? Crikey. Okay, so it's a proper AC transformer, not a DC one. Is there much difference? Yeah. This one's got a bigger diameter barrel. Right. Does this one fit? It does, and it is powered on ready. Let me plug this in out the way that you can't see under the desk because I'm amazing like that. Let's turn that on. yeah, they are size-wise and everything identical. Right. Let's just see if there's again, these should all work. I mean, obviously that one did. I mean, again, I have no idea if these actually do work, but they were sort of bought off eBay for cheap. We have a flashing DSL sync light. Should probably create another user for this one on Radius, but I'm not going to for the minute. I'm just going to use the one we've currently got there. Given the issue that I had getting the first one set up, I might just leave it and this one is number 2 for the minute. Right, we have DSL sync, which is perfect. It is green. I have no idea why or what in reference to PPP is, but let's go and jump on this and see A, if this is configured, or B, if this is factory reset as well. Right, so that is all plugged in, and I'm assuming it's on the same IP address, which it appears to be. Now, I'm not going to fall into the same trap that we had last time. Let's actually log in using 1234. Okay, so this has been factory reset as well. Which is good. People should factory reset their stuff before they sell it on eBay. Not that this would have made too much of a difference, because there's nothing really stored in here that would potentially be an issue, other than maybe the username for the account and the service provider, I guess. But right, okay, so this is a much more modern menu, which already fills me with confidence and fear because it's a ZyXEL menu. I'm not even going to configure this for PPP yet. I'm literally just going to see if we have the options for TR069 in here. So where would we be looking? Well, it's not going to be in there, is it? Go back to the main menu. Advanced setup, remote management. Fingers crossed, are we going to see anything in remote management of any use? Telnet, FTP and web, even less than we had previously, which isn't a great sign, is it? I can't imagine it being in any other menu. I'd actually assumed that of all the routers that we'd got, these would be the easiest ones to configure for TR069, but I just cannot see it, and pretty much the menus are almost identical anyway. So the only thing I can think of is this is a command that needs to be configured via Telnet for all of this. Let's just jump back to the main menu. Now, if I am missing something, please shout. If I have missed something on screen or you're aware of how to actually program these for TR069, please shout, because I will certainly jump back into it. It's something that I want to cover, and also something I would like to get set up, because I have plans for all of these, and the plan is to put them online for you guys to be able to access and mess around with. However, I don't fully trust people to not try and factory reset these and knock them offline. So it would be great to have these built for auto provision, so that when someone no doubt does do that, these can go and reconfigure themselves and come back online. But I just cannot see it. There's not in any menu that would make me think it's in there. So I'm going to have to do a bit more research on it, which is annoying because I had wanted to get this working. So plan B is going to have to be the way forward with this. And that Windows 10 image has installed, but I need to get the software installed for that on that, and then we can run through that. Yeah, okay, cool. At this point, it's me configuring this for PPP. We know it should work. Yeah, there's not much more I can do with it at this point. Even if I get it configured, what are we going to do? Absolutely nothing at this moment. So, right, let me move stuff around and let me finish off getting the Tplink software installed, and then I will show you some form of auto provisioning, at least how it does work, or should work for that matter, in the real world. So right, let me come back to you in a moment. Right, and before we go any further, I just want to say that obviously auto provisioning will vary massively depending on the hardware vendor in use and also the network type and typology deployed, basically. If you are a GPON provider or FTTP provider that have full visibility and the fiber is actually yours in the ground and you own the whole thing from point to point, then it makes auto provisioning a damn sight easier, because you can run various auto discovery protocols on the network that you wouldn't be able to in other scenarios, like using L2TP or going through other wholesale providers that will typically restrict it. So mileage will definitely vary on all of that. Obviously, we buy in off of L2TP from BT Wholesale and Zen and a few other vendors, so we don't have the luxury of being able to run the auto discovery protocols across the network. So what we have to do is typically pre-configure all of our devices before they go out with the user information using the Aginet configuration tool. But some providers are able to basically configure these in a way that they know where they're talking to, or you've got the auto provisioning server and you have a very limited username and password that is set up on these, something like startup or setup at your realm, which has internal access to the network, which can then go and allow this at the very least to go and talk to the auto provisioning server, send its MAC address, get the config down for it, and then reconfigure itself for the user, restart, and then the user comes online. Okay, so the first thing we have to do on this is actually log into it and actually create a very basic configuration that we will then export, which will create the base firmware that the software will look for. And then we override certain parameters with the user configuration file that will sit next to it, all in the same directory, but combined when the device boots up. Now, it is a bit limiting. The ACS platform is massively more feature rich than what we've got here, but this does enable auto configuration and get a device configured and online. There are some annoyances to it. Number one is that TP-Link enforce minimum password standards for a lot of their fields, as I found out hard way when I was going through and building my application, along with issues with the formatting on the file, which I will explain at a later point. And as per normal, I can't type. Now, I've never programmed these for ADSL using the auto provision. It's always been FTTC or SAGIA or Ethernet using FTTP. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work, but knowing my luck, we will come across an issue with it. But I'm just going to go through and configure this normally. 038 PPPoE. Now this does need a generic user, and for that I have already created setup at the uplinkport.co.uk. Now this will get overridden with the customer details once we put that into the file, which will then obviously get uploaded, but for now it needs something in there. Also, it is a nice thing to have, just because if for whatever reason the device ends up in a state where it ends up back at this config, which should never happen, and there should never be a scenario where it does, but at least having it logging into your network means that you can then access it and program it manually for the customer if you need to. So uplink port.co.uk and password 123 exclamation mark. Let's just check password 123 exclamation mark, password 123 exclamation mark. Perfect. Now everything bar the RJ11 cable is plugged in, so let me just reach over and plug that in, because as part of this it will actually go and make sure it does actually have a valid connection. You can obviously skip through it, it's just nice to know that it is definitely working. Now, I don't see the option to set up VCMux or LLC, so I'm pretty sure in one of the last videos I set the port up to auto, so this shouldn't matter. If this doesn't connect, then we might have to go and amend that, but fingers crossed it does, and it's a surprise. Password 123 exclamation mark, next. Right, now, also as part of the auto provisioning process, we want this SSID and password to match what is sent out on the router's base, because of course they all vary. Now you could set up the uplink port and the password, whatever you want, and have that generically go out. But of course, it doesn't match the sticker that's on the bottom. So Tplink enable you to put a variable in, which is question mark undefined question mark on both of these. And basically what it will do is actually go and get the data that's embedded into the chipset when it boots up and configures itself, and then configure these parameters as per the sticker on the bottom. However, as I have found out, the TP-Links have both a password and a PIN. This particular variable here, or code snippet if you want, makes the device have its PIN. However, the PIN is not printed on the bottom of the router anywhere, it is just the password. The only way to get the PIN is to actually log into it and see what it's currently set. Now, that is of no use to us. TP-Link on the bottom of these devices have a QR code, which is kind of helpful because the program that I've built in the office, we can scan the QR code with the QR code stroke barcode reader that I've got attached to it. And what it'll actually do is it will unscramble all the crap that's in there, because that QR code is basically so you can scan it with a phone or other device and it'll automatically set up your Wi-Fi, but it'll extract the Wi-Fi password and put it into the Excel document, which then obviously is then used in the auto provisioning process. So we have a way around it. However, TP-Link in some of the newer models that did have that as a barcode, especially in the higher end series, have started removing it. So it is a constant sort of cat and mouse game with them at the minute, but I'm sure it'll get to the point where they remove all of this and then we are fundamentally forced to go to the ACS platform. The ACS platform is a wonderful platform. I have seen many webinars on it, and we've been invited and spoken to our TP-Link account manager, but it is very expensive. So right, that has connected, which is nice. Interestingly, it's showing the gateway. So note, obviously, on the ZyXELs that it wasn't showing the gateway. So clearly we have a bug in that particular version of firmware, or just in general with the ZyXELs, which doesn't surprise me because, of course, we've had issues with the DSLAM, but it is definitely there. Hopefully this change when it gets its config from the other file. So we will pray that that does work. Obviously, I'm setting all of this up from scratch. Obviously, in the office, we fine-tuned this over sort of a year or so. So I've got no guarantee this just works out the box, but we're going to run through this anyway. Now, this has got VoIP. We're not going to configure the VoIP or anything like that. Some of the routers that I am waiting for have, I'm not going to say too much, but have some bits I'd love to get working as well. So we'll do that in a future episode. But I'm rambling. Let's get this configured. Now, these are going to embed themselves as a few other parameters that we need to set up on this. So once this finishes, we'll go in and do those. One of which is we just need to disable SIP ALG. I'm not sure why that's not connecting. Oh, it's because it's on the local device. So let's jump into here. Let's turn that off. Let's save that. And the only other thing I'm going to set up on this is remote access. And all I'm going to do is just enable port 80. I'm not going to enable HTTPS because I can't be bothered. And I'm going to enable remote ICMP so we can at least ping it remotely if we need to. So that is all we're going to put in. Now, all we need to do is back up this file, which we're going to do like this. Now, I'm assuming this is put this in the downloads file, which it has. So if I take that file and go and wander over to the share config output, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to put that in here, and I'm going to remove all of this. So that is the base firmware that will look for, that will pull first, put those basic parameters in, and then override them with the user config information, which is now what we need to go and set up. Now, before I forget, we actually need to factory reset this device, because now that this has got information in it, this will not trigger the auto provisioning process on that device when it boots. It'll ignore it every single time. So let's do that now before I forget, which is actually just down here. Factory restore. I'm going to wait. I'm going to finish talking. Then I'm going to click yes and turn that off, because then it will try and boot and do its auto provisioning process, which it won't get. And I don't want it to get stuck, because these devices, when they go into a weird state, are a real pain to get back into here. The Aginet software is really good, but there are a few bugs with it, and it's still on version 1, and we've been using it for well over a year now. So, right. let me do that. I'll jump back. Right, that is factory resetting. So the Aginet software is comprised of two parts. Number one is the actual physical server. The physical server actually runs on a particular subnet, which is 192.168.66.0, with this machine being on 66.10. I imagine there is something built into the TP-Link from factory that used that particular subnet for its auto provisioning on the Aginet platform. Now, once we get all the config files in, we'll load that and I'll show you that. Now, the config on this is relatively straightforward and simple. So you get the MacBin configurator. Now, this can go and generate multiple different username and passwords and logins, and you can create it and you can export that to your Radius. We're doing it in reverse, whereby we're going to dump our information from Radius into this file, and then you convert it to the format required for a router and then upload that. There's no issue with doing that. That's what we do at the minute. And there's also no limit to the amount of devices that you can actually program on this, other than the DHCP pool, which is, I think, set to 100 on the server. So basically, you create your MacBin file. Now, I forgot I'd needed some form of Excel editor on this. Now, this particular file is extremely picky on the format in which you save it in, and I know that from experience because the program that I've already mentioned that I built, I tried to replicate this file multiple times and failed every single time, despite the import software that we're going to use saying it was absolutely fine and there was no issues with it. So the software I have built at the minute literally goes and gets this as a template, edits everything into it, and then saves it as is, because it is, for whatever reason, you cannot create your own file for this. It creates entries in here that shouldn't be in here when there's nothing in there, but it's a whole heap of hassle. So fundamentally, you've got your basic configuration, and I will jump to a file that I've already put all this information in, ready to go into the program. So we have, if I scroll across, we have our MAC address, which I've already got from the bottom of the router, and in the office we just scan that in with a barcode reader. We have our GUI password that I have set with an additional exclamation mark just to prove that it is definitely changed and working. We have our wireless key, which I've taken off the bottom of the router, which again, normally in the office, we use our QR scanner to be able to go and grab that information and drop it in. And then I actually have our username and password that I've gone and grabbed from our Radius for here, for the user that we want specifically configured for this router. And that is it. That's all I've done. And as you can see, there's very little you can actually program in this. So it does, and it meets a purpose, but it's not very feature rich. And also the generate flag in this is so the software knows it's actually created a file for that output if you reload this file back into it. So it's relatively quite intelligent, but also relatively quite limited at the same time. So let's run this through the MacBin file, create the file that we need, drop that into the folder with everything else, start up the server, and then we'll get that provisioned, hopefully. Right, so returning back to the MacBin executable. I'm just making sure my mic has got power because I've been at this for a little while now. So we are going to grab the edited version of the file, and we're going to tell this we want to export it into C drive share config. Now this will automatically put it in the output file. So if I do that, now this process can, oh, apparently I've still got it open. Of course I have. Let's try that again. Right, that has created the file. Now, if we jump into the output directory, which I've still got, right, so we've created the bin file, which has the MAC address as the file name for that device. So next, we need to go and load up the server in order to get the TP-Link device to go and talk and hopefully download its config. Now, it's currently turned off. Now, if I run this as administrator, because it needs full access to everything to work, and actually set the folder for it. I haven't opened this up yet. Share config output. Right, so fundamentally this is running a DHCP server with a total of 100 available leases. It is also running a TFTP server that's sat in the background, which it sends its files. It's its own inbuilt little ecosystem, and it works really, really well. You wouldn't want to run this on a production network because it is giving out DHCP addresses, which is why you'd have to run the ACS platform. So let me get a camera mounted, the TP-Link up, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it should just come up, grab its config and configure itself. Now this will moan because there is a file missing, and I know that for a fact. The favorites, the icon isn't in there. I don't have the software to be able to generate that particular file on here, and I've spent so much time getting everything on here to work, we will forgo the favorites file for now. So that will error. Hopefully nothing else errors, and this just downloads its config, and you'll see that flashing away to say it's done it, and this should say it's sent everything. So let me go and get that set up now, and then we'll come straight back. Right, so hopefully if Adam is clever enough, you should see me, and somewhere on the screen you should see an overlay of the TP-Link preparing to boot. You'll also see in the corner a little metal box, and that is a 16-port Planet switch, because also part of the documentation is that this has to be run for a switch because both ports actually have to be up. They don't have time to auto-negotiate. There we go. That was quicker while I was rambling. So that has sent the master file, which has been sent and received. It has sent the Mac with the custom programming. It's sent the logo and icon. God knows what that looks like because I didn't really mess around with that too much. I just literally got ChatGPT to resize it. It's moaning about the favorites icon, which I said it would do anyway because I don't have that, but that has gone a lot easier than I expected it to. That is flashing away, which hopefully you can see somewhere on the screen. So now if I power cycle that, it should come up and connect using the TP-Link username. So let's see what happens. Right, so we are logged in to the brass, and I'm logged in, obviously logging to see what happens with that. Hopefully, again, you should be somewhere on the screen so you can see what it's doing, and you should see it come up into sync. And hopefully the radius requests we see coming on this will be for the TP-Link and not for the setup user. So I'm waiting with bated breath. None of this has been tested. Hopefully it just works, but it's never that simple on this channel, is it? There's always something that goes wrong and I end up losing more hair. Now that is booted, it's training for DSL sync. Obviously I'm looking at it because I can't see it here, whereas you can. So we'll sit in silence. That is in sync. Interesting, I've just had the MSAN click. Yes! Awesome! Vado is logged in with TP-Link. It is logged in with the password. The IP address that I gave it, which is correct, was just wildly out of the range. Excellent. Fantastic. Right, let's jump back onto here. This hasn't auto-provisioned itself again because this hasn't moved down, which is great. We should, if I've got this configured for the same subnet as well, be able to get back to here. It's got the uplink port as the logo, which is awesome, which means it has downloaded its config. And just to prove a point, password 123 exclamation mark shouldn't work, so it's password 123 exclamation mark. That has logged us in. That has downloaded the config from the file I've given it. Now it comes up with the setup wizard again because I assume it's a bug. All the information's there. You can skip out of it. It's got everything in that we want. I don't know if there's a diagnostic wizard built into this. There is. I don't know what the diagnostic wizard does. Let's see if we can ping 8.8.8.8. But, oh, the ping wizard's down here. Transmitted, received, 0. Perfect. It is online. Right, let's quickly do a DNS lookup because, of course, this is all where this started originally as well. So let's make sure DNS is working, which it is. It's resolved. Everything is where it should be. Just go for broke. Let's change the adapter settings on this to DHCP, which is connected into the TP-Link. Oh, not that one. Automatic. I said both subnets configured, one for this and also one for the Aginet software. I don't care at the minute on that. Yes, let's jump on to Google. In fact, this is a Windows 10 machine, so everything should work and we should be able to speed test and go away. Then you find everything these days seems to be accept this, reject that. Right, we are online, we are working. Let's do fast.com. Am I going to have to blur anything out? No, this is configured with an 8 meg profile as well, which is bursting up. That is an absolute awesome result. Now, I know it is not the auto provisioning that I promised with the ZyXELs that I would grab, but everything is currently stacked on top of them. But I hope it gave you some indication as to how auto provisioning looks, even on a very basic level. It's what I know we've got available to work in all of this, and we will play around with auto provisioning on a much bigger scale. And I want to get it working with the other devices. And while I've been recording, you may have heard a couple of pings come from my phone. They've actually been eBay notifications to actually say that the parcels I've got from eBay, 2 of which are currently out for delivery, and the time on that screen is actually correct. It is currently 9:30 at night. So God knows when they are going to turn up. But I have seen that quite a lot from Hermes recently, is that they have been delivering really late into the evening. But right, let me get all of this tidied up and closed up. I'm really happy with that result. That Tplink software is a real pain in the backside to get configured from scratch, especially when you're creating all the files from scratch. So I'm glad it came up. I'm glad it auto provisioned. Obviously, I closed the software, but it hopefully gave you some insight as to what happens in the background. Now, it's not full-blown auto provisioning in that plugging a router in and getting a user to actually configure. However, it is very similar to it in that it's running in its own local little network, which you would run the actual physical server somewhere in your network and have a client plug in. It would go and get its MAC or send its MAC address wherever it needed to, and then download its config files. So it's basically there. It's just that you wouldn't run this in a production network because of how the Aginet software talks to the routers, but fundamentally it is very identical to it. So, and it's worked. So I'm extremely happy with that. There is a lot more still to come. As I said, I am rambling. Let me get tidied up because it is getting late. I need to get inside and finish up as well. I've got a few more bits to do on this video, and I also need to edit it before Friday as well. And it is currently Tuesday, so time is massively ticking on. So, right, I will see you when I'm sitting there, probably in a couple of days. Right, I will keep this short and sweet because I am just finished editing this and realised I actually needed to do the outro for all of this, and this video is approaching 2 hours long. So officially the longest video, but I can promise you that they will not be this long going forward. It's only this long because I've kept in a lot of the stupid things and mistakes I've made, and like I said in the video, I won't cut them out because you can see the stupid mistakes I've made and also what I've gone to do and fix them. So these videos wouldn't be me without me including all of it. As I said, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's been software I haven't used for literally decades in some of this. So trying to remember where half the options is half a battle with all of it. But I wanted to show you what Webmin was like. Now, Webmin was completely overkill for the setup and configuration that we needed for all of this, but I just wanted to show you exactly what it was like for someone that hadn't used it before and actually the benefits that Webmin actually can bring. Now, loads of people will say that no, that's not the case. You don't use Webmin, you don't need Webmin, and that is also entirely true. You do not need it for the configuration for half the options on the system. And the file that I edited, or we actually needed to amend, I could have done in one file. It's just nice to see other systems and other things, and the feedback I get from others by going, oh, I wasn't aware of that software, go and play with it. That's what all this is about. It's just encouraging people to mess around and play around. I mean, I'm really fortunate to have what I have with all of this and the time I have to play with all of this. And yeah, and speaking of time, Another week has passed since I started recording this, and the collection has continued to grow. That was a bit of a mistake because I thought this was actually an ADSL modem as well. It's not. It's an ADSL or a broadband router. So I actually need a modem to go along with that. I have a Zoom ADSL X6 5590, I think it is, modem. I have a Hercules, God knows what, I just happened to see it floating around on eBay and I thought I got a really good deal with this. The seller hasn't shipped the power supply or anything else, they're coming separately, but I actually found in-boxed versions of this for only an extra sort of 10-20% more than what I paid for this. So I'm a little bit annoyed because I wanted the box, but it is what it is. Hopefully that should work and be a nice one for the collection. And what I've been waiting to get, which is just out of shot, so bear with me, is this. This is a BT Home Hub 1. This was the original Home Hub that BT had with their ADSL products back in the day. This one is very worn, half the labelling's come off, so it's probably not the best example, but getting them in this configuration that has the DEC phone paired with them in a working DEC phone is relatively quite rare. There are a few others out there that I've seen in black. I wanted white. I might try and get another phone because I found out that you can actually pair different phones to this, but basically I want to get this working as the main thing, and then I actually want to get the phone working. Now the phone, and the reason I wanted this particular version is I believe all of this is unencrypted SIP, and if we can get the details from this, which we can Wireshark from the DSLAM, then we stand a really good chance of actually getting this to register with an asterisk server and actually having a full-blown working ADSL BT hub which would connect. Login details are irrelevant because these are typically common known login details now that BT have used across the network for decades, but also we can again Wireshark and get the details if we need, and we can put them in on the radius to get this to authenticate. So this is really what I wanted to play around with, and I did have version 2 of this as well, but unfortunately that never turned up, and it still hasn't turned up, and I've only recently got a refund for the seller on all of that. So this will be the gem in the collection. I will try and get another one that's got all the labelling on it properly, but this is really what I want to be playing with next time, and that is exactly what we're going to do next time. We are going to play around with all of this. I have plans to get all of these online and connected. We'll go through and configure them and just have some fun in the next video. I love doing all the infrastructure stuff, but it's incredibly time consuming, not only for me, but also for you to watch, because I leave bits in that I probably shouldn't do. And again, that's generally my mistake. So either way, that is going to be fun for next video. And we didn't even get onto the topic of this. So that again deserves a video in itself. I also have some additional bits now to support that because this is MLPPP. The MikroTik does not support MLPPP, so I have some Cisco gear on the floor that does support MLPPP. I have updates on IP addresses and ASNs and all of that, but I won't bore you with that in this video. It's run on far too long. So the only thing I need to say is thank you for watching. If you are still here, you are absolutely incredible. If you would drop me a subscribe or like, that really helps me and helps the channel grow. Because of all of that, I've been able to get some additional sponsors online, one of which I'm going to pop the icon on the screen for now, which is Zen. They have very kindly agreed to be my hardware sponsor moving forward for all the hardware that they rip out the network that is old and legacy. They're going to let me get hold of so we can go through and explore a lot of it, which is absolutely fantastic. So Richard, I cannot thank you enough for allowing me to do that, and once I get permission to mention the other guys, I will as well on that. So that, I'm really excited, and I said it's enabled me to get a few other sponsors as well that are slowly in the work, so more on that later. The last thing I need to end with is the giveaway. The giveaway is all sorted. The giveaway is going to be done through gleam.io. I will probably announce it quickly in a short. I was going to do it in this video, but this video has run on far too long. So the giveaway will be going live beginning of next week, and I'll probably run it for about a week. The only thing I ask is you be subscribed to the channel. The giveaway is going to be worldwide. I'm only going to be doing one t-shirt because of the giveaway being worldwide, because I don't know where the t-shirt's going, and postage costs vary massively from literally a couple of pound all the way up to literally 50 or 60 pounds. So, and that doesn't include any import fees, which you will be responsible for as well. So description will have all of the details in for that, for the giveaway. And yeah, good luck. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I cannot thank you enough, and I will see you in the next video.